At the rate our next guest is going, she may run out of titles that contain the word cowboy. The author of Tall, Dark, and Cowboy, One Fine Cowboy, and Cowboy Tough, to name a few of her successful romance novels, is Wyoming's own Joanne Kennedy. The first volume of her new series, The Cowboys of Decker Ranch, will be released this spring. Once again, we welcome Joanne Kennedy to our studio to talk about her latest real-life experiences and her inspiration.
Well, Joanne, thanks for joining us today. And I want to start out by reading something from a blog post that you wrote March 2013. And you say, you wrote, "As a newly minted breast cancer survivor, I've had a quick and dirty reminder of my mortality that made me step back and look at my life in a new way." So lots happened to you since we last saw you.
It certainly has.
How has that experience affected your work, your writing, and you're looking at life in a new way?
Yeah, it's affected it a lot. It's just, getting that diagnosis is such a big bang that you think can never happen to you. So there's just that moment when you realize everything can change at any moment. You never really know what's going to happen. So it's a big shock. Of course, my second thought was, now I can write women's fiction. They always have those books where three women go to a beach house and one of them has breast cancer. And so I was like,
a whole new series, maybe.
I was like, I can use this. But no, seriously, it made me realize life is short. And it just made me realize that a lot of the things that we've always talked about, we needed to do. And it also made me realize I had a whole lot of books to write. That I needed to get done. They always say that when your time comes, nobody ever says, "I wish I'd spent more time at the office." I kind of don't think that's true. If you're passionate about your work and you think it matters, it might just be romance novels, but I like having them out there. And if you're passionate about your work, you kind of do end up wishing that you'd written all this other books that didn't get written. So it made me more passionate, if anything, about what I do. And it kind of shone a new light on, I think it added some emotional depth to my books that they didn't have before.
Well, you had mentioned, Cowboy Tough just came out.
That's been a little while now.
And then another series is coming out.
I have a new book coming out in April. And that was a hard-fought book. I was writing that book. I was about a third of the way through it when I got that diagnosis. So I wrote that book through surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, and the whole breast cancer experience. And it's kind of funny because I figured out fairly early on that if I could just write a little bit, if I could just do something normal that mattered to me every day, that day would be a good day. So I kept trying to write at least a sentence a day. And I thought that was about all I was doing. But when I got to the end of it, I had a book. And there were a lot of struggles. Chemotherapy does some really strange things. Anybody who's been through it knows it does some really strange things to your mind. I would have trouble calling words up. It can make it really hard. For me, it was anything 3 syllables or over was really hard to think of. So I went through the manuscript and I would just put XXX when I couldn't think of the word. And I talked to my oncologist and she said, you'll get it back. Don't worry, you'll get it back. So I had great faith in her and just kept going through. And sure enough, when I finished the manuscript and went back, I filled in all those X's, just no problem. Just like, I know exactly what word I was looking for.
Just as soon as that was over.
And
well, how did it deepen then? Did it deepen your writing, do you think, in that particular book?
I think that hopefully you can't see, breast cancer in that book. It's still a fun book. It's still, got a lot of humor to it. But I think that what happens to the people in that book, they have a little more at stake. Life just matters more. The book is about a small town called Why Not, Wyoming, and it centers around Phoenix House, which is a home for foster kids, and it's sort of a last chance home for foster kids. It's in the middle of Wyoming. It's for kids that run away, basically, that haven't been able to be placed. So these are pretty tough little 10-year-old boys, basically. There's 5 of them. And a woman comes to run it for just a temporary placement because they can't get anybody to live there. And she's really she's been working with inner city kids in Chicago and Denver, and this isn't really what she has in mind. But she gets very attached to these kids. And then the hero, the cowboy, there's always a cowboy, and he gets kind of tricked into teaching these kids to ride. And of course he wants to teach them to ride bucking horses, but she prevails and they don't do that. They want to, the kids want to. Yeah. But, and he has a connection with these kids that you wouldn't necessarily guess at the beginning of the book.
That's
he has
for
a very,
surprise.
Yeah, he has a very deep connection to these kids and a lot more in common with them than she realizes at the beginning. Because she looks at him and says, he's a cowboy. He lives life on the range. What does he know about these tough little city kids whose parents, neglected them or abandoned them? But he knows a lot more than you would think. So it makes for an interesting story.
Yeah. So how do you know when a book is taking off?
There's a point where the characters kind of take on a life of their own. There was one occasion when I came downstairs and I was telling my husband that I was really upset with these people and that they had slept together. And it was way too soon for them to do that, and I didn't feel like they were ready, but it had happened and it was done. And he thought I was talking about some people at work, and I wasn't. I was talking about characters in my book that had sort of gotten loose from the reins and done their thing. And that's really how you know when a book's alive, is when the characters kind of, you can rein them in and make them stick to the plot, but if you overdo that, it kind of goes dead on you. You want the characters to be alive. And so when they're kind of, when the dialogue comes from them rather than feeling like it comes from me, and the things they do seem to come organically from their lives rather than from mine, I feel like that's when the book becomes real and the world of the book becomes real, and the book has taken off.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to this new series.
Yeah, well, thanks.
And thank you, Joanne.
Sure, thank you so much.
Yeah.